In 2010, electronics companies believed the future of television had arrived. Manufacturers showcased new screens that promised to transform home entertainment. Movies would leap off the screen. Sports would feel immersive. Viewers would experience depth instead of flat images. But within only a few years, the technology had almost completely disappeared. What happened to 3D television? This is the story of one of the most heavily promoted consumer technologies of the 2000s and why it failed. The modern push for 3D entertainment began in 2009 with the release of James Cameron's film Avatar. The movie was an enormous success. According to CBS News, the film earned $232 million during its premiere and appeared to overcome many of the difficulties that had previously limited 3D filmmaking. For Hollywood studios and electronics manufacturers, the message seemed clear. Audiences were ready for a new generation of immersive entertainment. Industry leaders began to imagine a future where 3D would expand beyond movie theaters and into living rooms. To understand the excitement, it helps to understand how the technology worked. 3D television relied on a technique called stereoscopy. As described by TechRadar, each eye sees a slightly different version of the same image. Because of this difference, the brain interprets the picture as having depth instead of appearing flat. Electronics companies quickly moved to capitalize on this idea. In August 2009, Panasonic announced a partnership with filmmaker James Cameron. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the goal was to encourage consumers to consider purchasing 3D televisions. Panasonic and its competitors planned to begin selling the sets in 2010. Manufacturers built an entire ecosystem around the technology. Blu-ray discs began including 3D versions of movies, and some smart televisions added 3D features. The enthusiasm was especially visible at major technology events. According to Wired, 3D televisions appeared widely at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2010. When the event returned in 2011, manufacturers introduced even more products built around the technology. For a brief moment, it looked as if the future of television had arrived. But problems were already beginning to appear. Even during the early excitement, some observers noticed a critical weakness. There simply was not enough content. Reporting in The Hollywood Reporter as early as 2009 suggested that the limited number of 3D movies and television programs could make it difficult to persuade consumers to adopt the new televisions. Over time, those concerns became more visible. Wired reported that 3D televisions were not becoming as popular as manufacturers had expected. Prices were high. Programs produced in 3D were limited. Some viewers also experienced physical discomfort when watching the images. Adoption remained extremely low. Just over 1 million units were sold in 2010, and adoption across the United States remained below 10%. Other practical inconveniences also appeared. A reporter attending the CEDIA Technology Conference noted that many 3D glasses used disposable batteries instead of rechargeable ones, creating another inconvenience for viewers. Meanwhile, the broader entertainment market began to shift. Phys.org reported that although revenue from 3D films reached about $1.8 billion in 2012, growth had stagnated. At that same year's Consumer Electronics Show, manufacturers were already beginning to emphasize ultra-high-definition televisions instead of 3D. The problems extended into broadcasting as well. In 2013, ESPN terminated its 3D channel. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the network had broadcast events including rugby matches, the World Cup, and the X Games, but the channel never attracted the audience ESPN wanted. Retailers faced problems as well. Demonstrations required special glasses, and customers stole the glasses, or perhaps avoided using them because of concerns about cleanliness. Technical limitations also affected picture quality, because 3D and high-definition signals use the same bandwidth, reducing screen resolution. By this point, manufacturers knew something had gone wrong, so they began trying to fix it. Companies and researchers explored several possible solutions. Manufacturers experimented with redesigning 3D glasses to make them more stylish. But according to Wired, consumers interested in fashion were still not enthusiastic about wearing them. Researchers also began working on ways to eliminate the glasses entirely. At MIT's Media Lab, scientists developed a system called HR3D that used multiple LCD screens to filter light so viewers could see 3D images from different positions. At Hewlett-Packard Laboratories, engineers explored another approach. According to science, their design used diffraction gratings and waveguides to improve image quality while allowing viewers to watch 3D images without glasses. Technology companies also experimented with commercial versions of these ideas. Stream TV networks introduced a system called UltraD designed to produce 3D images without glasses. Dolby focused on developing similar technologies with the hope of bringing them to consumers in the following years. Manufacturers continued demonstrating these concepts at industry events. At the 2014 Consumer Electronics Show, companies including Vizio, Samsung, and Sharp showcased auto-stereo technology designed to eliminate the need for glasses. But by that point, the industry's attention had already begun to move elsewhere. By 2014, the shift away from 3D television was becoming obvious. IEEE Spectrum reported that the Consumer Electronics Show that year featured far fewer 3D displays. Vizio televisions no longer supported the feature, and only LG prominently showcased 3D products. Manufacturers were now focusing on different innovations, especially ultra-high-definition televisions. Over the next few years, support for 3D continued to disappear. According to TV Insider, Sony and LG both stopped supporting 3D televisions in 2017. The technology that had once been promoted as the future of home entertainment had quietly faded away. Looking back, many observers concluded that the excitement surrounding 3D television had been temporary. After the release of Avatar in 2009, the rapid growth that manufacturers expected never appeared. The economic environment also played a role. Televisions were already becoming more expensive as the industry transitioned to digital, and many consumers were reluctant to pay extra for a feature they did not consider necessary. TechRadar later argued that while digital cinematography and 3D filmmaking briefly created the ideal environment for the technology, consumer enthusiasm faded once most movies returned to traditional formats. Some analysts place the trend in a broader historical context. According to Red Shark News, 3D entertainment has often become popular during difficult periods for the movie industry. A similar surge occurred during the 1950s, when television was becoming widespread. Outside of those moments, however, 3D has struggled to maintain long-term popularity. In the end, 3D television followed a familiar pattern in the history of technology. A breakthrough moment created enormous excitement. Companies rushed to build products around the idea. But the technology never solved the practical problems that consumers faced. And as quickly as the industry had embraced 3D television, it moved on to the next innovation. Today, the televisions remain, but the third dimension disappeared.